Two people, same family, 300 miles of open water between them. One was buried in Sicily, the other in Tunisia, both over 2,000 years ago. Scientists found them, ran their DNA, and discovered they were cousins. That alone is extraordinary, but here is what made the entire room go quiet. Neither of them carried a single drop of Levantine blood. The people we have called Phoenicians for 2,500 years, the people who built Carthage, who sailed every corner of the Mediterranean, who gave us our alphabet, were not from Phoenicia. And a German laboratory just proved it. If you've ever wondered whether history is telling you the full story, stay with me, because what comes next goes deeper than most people are willing to go. March 2024, Max Planck Institute, Leipzig, Germany. A researcher is looking at a screen showing two DNA samples side by side. Sample 1, a person buried at Birgi on the western coast of Sicily. Because what comes next goes deeper than most people are willing to go. March 2024, Max Planck Institute, Leipzig, Germany. A researcher is looking at a screen showing two DNA samples side by side. Sample 1, a person buried at Birgi on the western coast of Sicily. Sample 2, a person buried at Kirkouan, a peninsula in modern Tunisia. 300 miles of open Mediterranean water between them. Both dated to the same centuries, 800 to 400 BCE. Both buried with Phoenician objects. Both addressed in a Semitic language that came from the Levant. The computer runs the comparison. 3 long DNA segments match. Too long to be coincidence. Too precise to be noise. These two people were family. 5th to 7th degree relatives. 2nd or 3rd cousins. Here is what that means in plain language. You do not find cousins separated by 300 miles of open sea unless their families were crossing that sea, regularly, deliberately, for generations. Someone in this family owned the Mediterranean. They treated it the way you treat a road between two cities. Now here is the part that changes everything. Their DNA breakdown. Roughly 85% Sicilian-Aegean, 15% North African, 0% Levantine. Not a little Levantine, not traces of Levantine, 0. The people we named Phoenicians, after the purple dye from Tyre and Sidon on the coast of Lebanon, were genetically from Sicily and the Aegean world. Harold Ringbauer and his team at the Max Planck Institute spent years assembling this data. 210 individuals, 14 sites across the Mediterranean, published in Nature in 2025. What they found was not a migration story. It was a case of stolen identity, except no one stole anything. History simply got the name wrong. Before we go further, if you found out your ancestors had built one of the greatest civilizations in history, but history forgot to give them their real name, would you feel cheated or proud? Drop it in the comments. I mean it. I read every single one. Montserrat, Sardinia, tomb 351. 4 individuals buried together in the 5th century BCE. 2 children, 6 to 12 years old, sharing near-identical mitochondrial DNA, the kind of DNA passed only from mother to child. Siblings or cousins through the maternal line. Beside them, a young woman carrying a rare haplogroup called N1B1A5. That haplogroup does not exist in modern Sardinia. Not one living person on that island carries it today, but it exists in Lebanon and in North Africa. Elizabeth Matassou Smith at the University of Otago and Pierre Zalua at the Lebanese American University published this in 2018. They had found something unexpected. There were Levantine women buried in Sardinia, real women, with real names probably, carrying DNA lineages from the Eastern Mediterranean. And there was a woman buried in ancient Beirut in a full Phoenician burial context whose DNA matched a European lineage. Specifically, she was genetically 2 mutations away from a pre-Phoenician Sardinian sample. Think about what that means. A European woman buried in Lebanon in the Phoenician era. The sea was not a barrier. It was a corridor that traffic moved through in both directions. But here is the haunting part. Those 2 children in tomb 351, their Levantine maternal lineage is gone. No living descendants. The line died with them or very soon after. The Phoenician genetic contribution to Sardinia was not a foundation, it was a visitation. Women came from the Levant, they were buried with care, and their bloodline simply stopped. We may never know why. Disease, conquest, assimilation. The record gives us the bones, but not the story behind them. What we do know: the people who built the Punic world in Sardinia were not these women. They were something else entirely, something older and much closer to home. Beirut, 2005. A geneticist draws blood from a fisherman in Byblos, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on Earth. Pierre Zalua has spent 5 years searching for the Phoenician genetic signature. He is looking for proof that Phoenician men left sons across the Mediterranean. He finds it. Haplogroup J2, present in 25% of Lebanese men today, shared across every religious community, Muslim, Christian, Druze, which means it predates all of them. It was already there. He publishes the results in 2008. The media calls it the Phoenician gene. 1 in 17 men across the Mediterranean carries it. The story is perfect. Now, here is what that study was actually measuring and what it was not. J2 is a Y chromosome lineage. It tracks one line, father to son to son to son. It does not tell you about the mother, the grandmother, the great-grandmother, all the women who make up the other half of every person who ever lived. It answers this question: did Phoenician men leave sons? Yes, they did. But the 2025 Max Planck study asked a completely different question. What was the full genetic makeup of the people actually living in Punic cities? The answer was Sicilian-Aegean, not Levantine. These two findings are not in conflict. They are looking at two entirely different things. One tracks a surname, a single male line passed down like a family name. The other tracks the full human being, every ancestor from every direction. The man in Byblos who tested positive for J2, the fisherman, said something simple when Zalua told him the results. He said, "We belong to this area. We are not passers-by." He is right. J2 in Lebanese blood is real. The connection to this land is real. But J2 is not a Phoenician invention. It is a Levantine Neolithic lineage, 15,000 years old at minimum. The Phoenicians carried it. They did not create it. And in the Western Punic world, Carthage, Sardinia, Sicily, Spain, J2 is almost completely absent. The sons of the Levant stayed in the Levant. The civilization that spread across the Mediterranean was built by someone else. This is the part of the story that history has no chapter for. Sicily, 2200 BCE. Long before Phoenicia exists as a word, long before Carthage has a single stone in it, a man is buried on the island. His DNA carries significant steppe ancestry, the genetic signature of ancient migrations from the Eurasian grasslands. But he is not Greek, not Phoenician, not Roman. He is Bronze Age Sicilian. And his genetic profile, his particular combination of Sicilian and Aegean ancestry, will become the dominant DNA of the entire Punic Western Mediterranean. Ringbauer's team ran the models. The primary source of ancestry in most Punic individuals matches Bronze Age populations from Sicily and Greece. The genetic distance between these two groups is so small, the computer sometimes cannot separate them. For the purposes of the ancient Mediterranean, they were one people. This ancestry dominates at every site, including Carthage, including Kirkouane in Tunisia. 84% of individuals from these North African Punic sites have more than half their DNA from this Sicilian-Aegean population. Here is the problem. We do not know what these people called themselves. We know the Mycenaeans. We know the Greeks. We know the Sea Peoples. We know every named group that moved through the Mediterranean in the Bronze and early Iron Age. We do not know the name of the people who became the Phoenicians of the West. They had no writing that survived. They left no monuments with their name on them. They were absorbed into a civilization that spoke a different language and worshipped different gods. And that civilization got all the credit. A migration wave reshaped the ancient world. It left genetic descendants in millions of people alive today. It built cities that stood for centuries: Carthage, Mocha, Tharos, Cadiz. And it left no name. We call them Phoenician because they used the language. They were someone else entirely. Every culture you admire may have been built by people history forgot to name. The Phoenicians did not die. They were never the ones we were counting. If you find that uncomfortable, good. That's what real history feels like. Now we get to the detail that no one is talking about, the finding that, for me, changes everything. Ringbauer's team did not just map ancestry, they looked at something called runs of homozygosity. In plain language, sections of your DNA where both copies, the one from your mother and the one from your father, are identical. This happens when your parents share ancestors, when they are related to each other. In most ancient Mediterranean populations, this is rare. In Punic populations, it is not rare at all. 11 individuals from Punic sites show levels of parental relatedness consistent with first or second cousins marrying each other. 3 individuals from Kherkouan in Tunisia, from Carthage, and from Matia in Sicily show levels so high that their parents were likely second-degree relatives. That means niece and uncle, or half-siblings. This is not poverty. It is not accident. It is deliberate, and it is happening across 6 different sites, from Sicily to Spain to North Africa, for centuries. This rate of close-kin marriage exceeds almost every other Bronze or Iron Age Mediterranean context. The only ancient group that comes close? Late Bronze Age Mycenaean royalty. Think about what this tells us. This is not a collection of local people who borrowed a foreign culture. This is a mobile, connected, genetically distinct community that was maintaining family ties across the entire Mediterranean and deliberately marrying within those ties. The Kherkouan pedigree makes it concrete. 5 individuals from the same burial site, 4 of them sharing identical maternal lineage. Diverse ancestries converging through the mother's line. This is a family network, not a city, not a trade post. A family spread across 600 miles of open water that kept finding each other, marrying each other, and burying each other in the same traditions for 1,000 years. We thought we were looking at a trading empire. We are looking at a family that owned the sea. Everything we have described so far is the first phase of the Punic world. Sicilian-Aegean people, maritime network, endogamous family ties, Levantine language and gods, but not Levantine blood. That is roughly 800 to 400 BCE. Then something changes. After 400 BCE, a new ancestry begins to appear in the data. North African ancestry, modeled on an ancient population from deep in the Algerian interior, begins showing up in Punic burials. First in Carthage and Kherkouan, then, after 400 BCE, it spreads to Sardinia and Spain. In Sardinia, none of the 12 individuals with significant North African ancestry date to before 400 BCE. The spread is that clean, that visible in the DNA record. Carthage was not importing culture from North Africa. It was absorbing people. Real families, real individuals who carried the ancient genetic signature of the African continent. 3 individuals from Kherkouan, 2 from southern Spain, 1 from Theros in Sardinia, carry more than 50% North African ancestry. If you have North African ancestry today and live anywhere in the Mediterranean world, this is where your ancient family history and the Punic story intersect. Not metaphorically, genetically. The standard version of history says Carthage was a Levantine colony that slowly became more African over time. The DNA says something different. Carthage was a Sicilian-Aegean city that began absorbing African ancestry after 400 BCE, and that absorption spread westward through the entire Punic network. The Punic world was actually 2 overlapping empires. The first, a Sicilian-Aegean maritime network, 800 to 400 BCE. The second, a North African empire that absorbed it and gave it new blood, 400 BCE onward. The Punic Wars were not Levantines fighting Romans. They were Sicilian-Aegeans with North African admixture, fighting an Italian city that would go on to inherit the entire Mediterranean. 146 BCE, Carthage burns. The Roman Senate ordered the city completely destroyed, its fields sown with salt, its name to be erased from memory. For 2,000 years, this has been told as the story of Rome wiping out the Phoenician people. The DNA says Rome was too late. The Phoenicians, the actual genetic Levantine population from Tyre and Sidon, had not meaningfully crossed into the Western Mediterranean at all. Their descendants stayed in Lebanon, in the actual Levant, where you can still find the J2 haplogroup in 1 in 4 Lebanese men today. What Rome burned in 146 BCE was a city built by Sicilian-Aegean people, increasingly mixed with North African ancestry, speaking a Semitic language they had inherited from traders and priests who came before them. Rome did not kill the Phoenicians. History had already replaced them. generation by generation, over centuries, through the quiet work of children being born and raised in a culture that was not their ancestors' own. Rome merely burned the costume. The 20 individuals from Punic sites in Sicily, Sardinia, and Spain, whose DNA dates to the Roman period, 250 to 150 BCE, they show the same Sicilian-Aegean profile. It did not change at the fall of Carthage. It was already what it was. There was no genocide of a Phoenician genetic population. There was no such population to genocide in the West. Sometimes civilizations disappear not because they are destroyed, but because their children quietly become something else. One generation at a time, until the original is a memory worn by strangers. A Phoenician mask. Terracotta from Theros in Sardinia. It has Levantine eyes. It has a Punic mouth. Someone wore it. We do not know who. We know only that the person beneath it was genetically Sicilian-Aegean. This is the summary of everything we have covered. The Punic world, culturally Levantine, linguistically Semitic, religiously connected to Tyre and Sidon, was genetically a Sicilian-Aegean civilization with North African admixture and traces of Levantine female migration that left no surviving descendants. We have spent 2,500 years calling them Phoenician. We named them after their language, after their gods, after the city their culture came from. We never asked who was wearing the mask. Culture is not blood. Culture travels. It infects host populations and remakes them in its image. The host survives. The culture survives. The original carrier, the actual Levantine people who first carried this language and these gods westward, they went home, or stayed home, and someone else wore the costume for 1,000 years. Now, what does this mean for you? If you are Sicilian, you may carry the body of the people who built the Punic world. If you are Lebanese, you may carry the blood of the people who gave it its name. If you are North African, your ancestors were absorbed into this network and became essential to it after 400 BCE. None of you owns the whole story. All of you are its inheritors. The entire Western world exists because nameless Sicilian-Aegean people put on a Levantine mask, sailed the Mediterranean for 1,000 years, kept marrying their own cousins, and called themselves something they were not. History forgot their name. The DNA remembered their bones. If this changed how you think about who builds civilizations and who gets the credit, hit subscribe. Because every week on this channel, we go exactly this deep into what ancient DNA is revealing about history's most famous names. And if you are Lebanese, Sicilian, Sardinian, Tunisian, or Spanish, I want to know, does this change how you see your own ancestry? Drop it in the comments. Next video, Ethiopian DNA. Scientists found something inside it that has no parallel anywhere in Africa. That story is next.